What Big Teeth You Have is brought to you by Damaged, the interactive web series, an entirely new way to experience story. Damaged is a psychological thriller about a young student who tries to unravel the mystery of a local gang and their connection to a serial killer. Viewers are invited to watch the series and gather clues, which unlocks an interactive web experience where users become part of the mystery. Watch the series, gather clues, solve the mystery. To learn more, visit damagetheseries.com.
I'm Robin Reed, and this is What Big Teeth You Have. How often do you think about death? I asked you that at the beginning of this podcast, and I'm still curious. Because thinking about death isn't just thinking about our own inevitable end. It can also mean the death of others, the loss of those we loved. Those you've heard from on What Big Teeth You Have all been touched by loss, by grief. Letty Johnson losing her brother Sam, Leon Bonet and Harmon Collier, who lost their wives to the wolf, Mary Claire, who lost her sister, and Sam. The more I dug into this story, the more I wanted to know, why did this change from a job to a crusade for Sam? Why did he seem more offended by a mistake by a uniform officer than by the brutal murders by the serial killer she sought? Why did he feel the desperate urge to not just document, but reinvestigate the case? And why, 6 months into researching what might have been any other book, did Sam sound like he was on the verge of a breakdown? It wasn't until I talked to Mary Claire about their friendship that I quite understood. So, the two of you became friends.
Well, I mean, it started when he told me about Mara, and we got to talking about grief, and we realized we had a lot in common.
But who is Mara? Well, it wasn't until one of my later interviews with Letty, Sam's sister, that I quite understood.
He never quite got over it. Or he did, but how do you ever really get over something like that? Because I'll tell you, I haven't, and it's been a long time. Long time.
Here's the thing. Letty hasn't just lost one sibling in her life, but two. When Sam and Letty were young, their older sister Mara, who was older than them by almost 10 years, she was a teenager at this point, was run down by a drunk driver. It was a hit and run.
The thing was, we did kind of get over it at first. It was a tragedy, a stupid, senseless tragedy. It sucked, but we pushed through. And then we got a little bit older, and we wondered why the driver never went to jail, why there was no trial or anything. And Dad admitted that somewhere along the line, something had gone wrong.
That something was a problem with the evidence. The only way they identified Mara's killer was through DNA evidence from the driver's car, which was misplaced by the lab. With no witnesses and no DNA evidence, the charges were dropped. Sam spent his whole life burning with indignance that his sister's killer never saw justice.
I could tell it messed him up. I mean, how could it not? And after the Shane stuff came out, he couldn't stop thinking about it. I could see it in his eyes.
And Letty, on how Sam got the wolf and their dead sister Mara entangled in his mind.
I don't think he did it on purpose. At first, the wolf case was exciting to him. He'd been mildly interested in it, in the idea of an uncaught serial killer, for years. But when he dug into the stuff with Officer Shane and the planted evidence, it woke something up in him. This old, angry grave that, I don't know, it ate him up from the inside, and I lost him to it.
Memory is a funny thing. After a loss, what's important to us isn't what, but why. What gives us our building blocks? Sure. The small bits of evidence that tell us the driver was drunk, the evidence was lost, the killer went free. What lets us build our memories into a story? And that story tells us how to deal with our grief. It's a story about why. To Sam Carling, the why of his sister's death and of the wolf's victims become the same. Corruption and incompetence among the police. My own journey toward why, when it comes to Sam, feels like it could tie up in a neat little bow. Man sees himself in a case, gets too deep in, doesn't access the mental health resources he needs to stabilize himself, and loses himself to it. This could be the why I've spent all this time looking for. I could stop looking. But here's the thing. You might say he sounds like he was in a bad place, a desperate place. It makes sense that he might fall into despair, think that he'd never find the wolf, never prove his case against the police, and in that heightened state of mind end everything. And yes, that's what the cops believe. That's what Letty believes. But let me play you a clip from Sam's final tape, recorded the day he died.
I've got a long way to go here, but I think I'm starting to see some patterns. Some things are lining up, and I feel like I'm close. I've got 3 interviews today, and any of them could give me what I need. Shane's finally agreed to talk to me in the morning. In the early afternoon, I've pinned down one of the Braithwaites to talk about that garage of theirs. And in the evening, let's just say, I might actually have tracked down this motherfucker once and for all. I think tonight I'll be talking to the wolf.